Are we ready?
As soon as I went like this, the wave out.
Yeah. All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome. It's really a pleasure to be with you. Those of you who are here live, and those of you who are here virtually. So this is a class. Just want to make sure, I feel like I need to make sure you're on the right flight. Right. You are this. Hopefully, you signed up for the class on Midrash. I think we're going to have 5 sessions together. We're going to be discussing the Midrashim of the book of Sefer Bereshit, of the book of Genesis. And we're going to look at Midrashim that relate to the coming week's parsha, right? The coming week's Torah reading, which now is Noah, right? We just started the Torah again yesterday. Actually, we started it on Simchat Torah, but we started it again yesterday. And so we're going to look at the Bereshit. So we didn't get a chance to look at Midrashim for Bereshit. We're going to jump right into Midrashim for Noah. Let me just share one I thought about what Midrash is. In a basic way, the oral law could be broken up into 2 columns, 2 types of oral law. One would be halacha, and the other would be agadah. And Midrash would fall into the second category of agadah. So halacha is what we're supposed to do, right? How you shake a lulav, how you build a sukkah, how one lights candles, how many candles one is supposed to light, how one prays, all of the ritual laws, the laws of kashrut, all the laws of halacha. And some people are more drawn to halacha because it's very comforting, right? It tells us exactly. So we'd like to know what to do in any given circumstance. So I need to know what to do on Shmini Atzeret. I open up a book of halacha, and it tells me exactly what to do. It's solid ground, and it also connects me to years and years and years of generations of traditions, right? Generations of traditions that these I'm doing what my Bubby and Zadie did and what their Bubby and Zadie did, right? Well, when we study halacha and we follow halacha, we connect to generations of previous practice, and we feel very comforted because we know exactly what to do. Then there is agadah, right? Agadah is, one could say maybe agadah is for dreamers. Right? Agadah doesn't tell us what to do, it doesn't tell us what to think. It opens up, vistas of different ideas and different things to think about, and that actually sometimes could be quite radical if we choose to interpret things that way, and is less comforting. But some people are drawn to it because they want to expand, because they want to see the world in a different way. They want to understand how our rabbis suggested or thought that we understand the human experience or our relationship with God or our relationship with other people. And that's what agadah is. And some people are more drawn to that. Of course, I would argue that a well-rounded Jewish life should have elements of both, right? Should have elements of connection to terra firma, right? Elements of connection to tradition and how we do things, and elements of this sort of broad ability to think about large, important concepts in new and different ways. And so that is what we are. We are going to be engaged in the study of agadah, the non-halachic elements of the oral law of the Torah, and as I'm sure we will see, I have my understandings of the Midrash, which may match up with your understandings of the Midrash, but may be very different. And that's what we're here to do. We're here to talk and to share ideas about how we understand these Midrash. So with that, let's jump right in to the first one. So everyone should have a packet in front of them. Midrash Rabbah, Bereshit Rabbah 33, 2 and 5, right on top. And it should have, it should have page number 1 on the bottom. Right? Four?
Yeah.
Is this done right? Okay, I stapled mine correctly, okay. Right away, we're going to get a lesson in what Midrash does. Sometimes when Midrash, they took another verse and they used that verse to understand the verse that we're trying to do. You all have experienced this many, many times. You may just not know it. The main part of the Haggadah on Pesach, where we talk about the verses that describe the Jewish people going to Egypt, being enslaved in Egypt, being saved from Egypt. It's a small number of verses, but what the authors of the Haggadah did is they took verses from other places in the Torah to explain those small verses. Later, when you go home, open up a Haggadah. I'll try to remember to bring one next week and to show you. I forgot to bring one. But that's a great example of using one verse in the Torah to understand other verses in the Torah. And that's what we're going to see here right now. Because we're trying to understand in this Midrash, we're trying to understand Noah's relationship with the people of his generation, and more specifically, why the Torah says in the first verse that I gave you, Vayiskor Elohim et Noah. And God remembered Noah and all the beasts and all the cattle that were with him in the ark. Now, what does that mean in the most basic level, in the pshat, the most basic understanding? What do you think that means? Anybody? Right? Not that God forgot, because God doesn't forget. It's good to be the king, right?
There's this guy in a boat. What are we going to do with him?
Right, meaning this guy's floating around in a boat, and now God says, "Okay, it's time to move the story. It's time to move the story ahead." But the rabbis were intrigued by this. God remembered. There were other words, right, that the Torah should have used for telling us that God was going to now pay attention to Noah and move the story ahead. So why Vayiskor? That's the riddle that the Midrash is trying to solve. Why do we use the word that God remembered Noah? Okay, so let's now, with that, the Midrash quotes two psukim from Kohelet, Ecclesiastes. Okay, on the top of page 2. Would someone care to read these two verses? You can read them in Hebrew or in English. Any volunteers? Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
There was a little city with few men in it, and it came to a great king who surrounded it and built mighty siege works against it. Present in the city was a poor man.
Skip that. I'm sorry, I meant to. Present in the city was a poor man. A poor wise man who saved it with his wisdom. But nobody thought of that poor man. So the rabbis see this verse in the Torah that God remembered Noah, and they say, you know what, this is how we're going to understand this whole event, by understanding better these verses in Kohelet. And now we come to the Midrash where it says letter B. Davar acher, meaning another interpretation, because there was already some exposition in the previous Midrash, which we're skipping. Davar acher, hadahu dichtiv, thus it is written, and now the Midrash quotes our pasuk, ir ketana, vanashim ba me'at, uva'aleha melech gadol. Right, there was a small town with only a few inhabitants, and a mighty king came upon it and surrounded. So now the Midrash. This is one type of Midrash. It's going to go phrase by phrase to try to understand what each of these phrases means and how it connects to Noah. So let's do it. Ir kitana. Right, this is on the bottom of page 2. Ir kitana. There was a small town. Okay? Zeh ha'olam. This refers to the world. So let's stop there for a second. We could maybe spend the next 45 minutes on this. Ir Kitana, Zeh Ha'olam. There was a small town. This refers to the world. So how does that feel to you?
Like a matter of fact, it's significant.
What?
Like a really insignificant.
Okay, right. We're really insignificant, right? Meaning, why would the Midrash refer to the entire world as an Ir Kitana, as a small town?
Compared to Hashem.
Okay, so maybe that's right. Maybe that's a very good answer. Some suggest, that's excellent. Some suggest that this means compared to Olam Haba, right? Compared to the world to come, God's dominion, this is very small. Meaning we really are quite insignificant. We think we're all that, but in the big picture of the whole universe, right? Of the whole, solar system, everything, right? We're actually quite small. But could be. That's one approach. But let's try to zoom in to the context of the story. Right, we're talking about Noah and his generation. Ir Kitana, the small town, refers to the world. So any other suggestion of why we would refer to the world as an Ir Kitana?
Question,
Yeah.
does it refer to the world pre-flood or after flood? Or does that make a difference?
I would say that based on the rest of the Midrash, at this point, it's pre-flood. Pre-flood.
For the people, that was the whole world, for those people that live in the Yuktana.
But why is the world referred to as an Ir Kitana, as a small town? The world is not small. If the world is a small town, then what's a small town? Right?
Maybe
Yeah.
to Noah, it was a small town. I mean, if we're talking about Noah.
Noah wanted to go to the big city and strike it big.
Right, like, maybe for him, it felt small.
Okay, good.
Well, I was going to comment that if it was during the flood, there's only Noah and his family besides the animals.
This is right. This is pre-flood. Correct. You're right. Good. Yes.
Maybe it's a small town in comparison to the big king. The king is.
Okay, good. The king is God. So we said, right, the king you see is God. And so compared to God's realm. Okay, but here, did you want to say something?
When you look up at the sky and all the stars and everything, it seems like we're so small and insignificant compared to the galaxy. We
Right,
are on the
good.
outskirts.
So compared to everything else, we are small. That's correct. Okay. If there are any comments, you'll let me know online. Okay. So the rabbis in the Midrash, the commentaries on the Midrash, take the word Kitana and they redefine it. It's not about the size of the world. It's about the quality of the world. The world was small in quality. Right? Ir Kitana, I'll read you one of the commentaries. Shebimei harishaim naaseh ha'olam katan v'shafer. V'ha'anashim harabim naasu me'atim kitanim u'shrilin. In this time, in this period, is a period of evil people, right? Everyone was evil. God was about to destroy the world. That's not a spoiler. We know that. Right? God had to destroy the world. So Ir Kitana, these are small people because they're sinners. So it's not about the size of the world. Now we have a better understanding. Ir Kitana, it's a small town, meaning the people are small. And then the Midrash goes on. If you want to follow along with the English line by line, it's on page 3, and I'll read the Hebrew. Ir Kitana, Zeh Olam, Va'anashim ba me'at. And there are only a few people in it. So now again, we can understand, right? What do you think that means, only a few people in it? Right. There are very few good people. Again, the commentaries say, Shehayu muatim b'ma'ala. They were diminished in their stature, meaning their moral stature. Right, so we're adding layers here in terms of how the rabbis viewed what was going on there, right? Abanashim b'ma'at zed dor hamabu. That refers to the people of the generation of the flood. Okay? Uva Aleha Melech Gadol. And then a great king comes, right, and surrounds it. We're going to see what this means. The great king, who's that? Okay, right, that's God. Okay, and he surrounds it. He surrounds it. What does the verse in Kohelet say? V'savav ota uvana aleha mitzodim gidolim. And a mighty king came upon it and surrounded it. This refers to the Holy One, blessed be He, and built great siege works over it. Great siege. What are those great siege works? And so now let's figure out. Right, we have the world now is small because the people are small. They're diminished in stature. Comes along God, and He surrounds the world with some mechanism with which to destroy it. What is that? What does that mean? Water. It's amazing. The water. The commentaries say, God ekif et haolam b'yam okeanus, that God surrounded the world with the oceans. Shehu kimitsuda, it's like a trap. Al haolam l'shotfo imlo ya'asu ritzono yitbarach. This is unbelievable. How in the rabbinic mind, how we think of the oceans as being wonderful, although maybe not so much in the rising water capital of the world. We don't love that so much, and we can understand this Midrash. God surrounded the world with water. Why? So we could have an easy weapon to use to destroy the world.
So he knew in advance that there would be.
He didn't. Well, I don't want to get into the question of what God knows in advance, what God doesn't know in advance. But what this Midrash is saying is, just in case, right? He's like a Minuteman, right? Just in case God had this weapon ready at hand at a moment's notice to use to destroy the world if the people deserved it. L'shotfo imlo ya'asu ritzono yitbarach. To use if they did not do His will. That's a really frightening way to look at the world, I think. Right? If we look at the natural resources of the world as our enemy. And by the way, I think this does match up well with the ancient, or not so ancient, the view of nature, right? It's a very modern conception to think that we have to protect nature. Originally, we had to protect ourselves from nature. If you lived at the end of the forest, you had to protect yourselves from the wild animals in the forest. If you lived near a river, you had to protect yourself against rising waters, right? It's only basically a modern conception that's the other way. And now we're the enemy of nature. Right? Originally, that's not the way, certainly not the way rabbinic literature, and just not the way people thought. Right? We conquered the wilderness. That was an American conception because the wilderness is dangerous. So this is a very realistic way to think about the ocean. Okay, yeah.
My question is Lord gets the water all around. Did He tell the people, hey, get your act together, otherwise I've got this ready to go?
Yes, He tells Noah that I'm going to bring a mabul, a flood, to destroy the world, and you're going to build it. And there are other midrashim, which we'll allude to in a few minutes, where Noah was actually building the ark, and people would come to him and say, hey, what's going on? He said, well, God's about to wipe us all out. Get on board. Yeah, nah. Right? So yeah, He gave ample warning. Many years. Yeah.
You go back to Midrash about one, we're talking about human here. Then we're talking about human inhabitants. So they're going from male to the inhabitants, recognizing that children were there. And then when they went to the ark, they took 2 by 2. So that to me is like the beginning.
Interesting. Okay, I want to make sure I understand what you're saying. Vanashim. Let's not get caught up too much on the English translation. I think a lot of these could be translated as gender neutral. Anyway, I just grabbed the translation that was easy without neutralizing it myself. I think it doesn't really change the meaning so much. Yeah.
I'm curious about the word fear versus respect. Respect for the environment, respect for the power of.
Right, I think that's new. I think in many societies, up until modern times, we feared nature and we had to conquer it. And only now do we realize, oh, that may have not been such a good idea. And now we have to rehabilitate, right? I think that's the way we view. I mean, if you came to the frontier, you came to settle the new country, and in order to have a place to live, you had to cut back the forest so you kids could play outside without being, eaten by a bear, and that's just the way the world operated until.
But not always. Like the indigenous people of Australia always had a great respect, and they didn't operate that way. So there must have been people who didn't.
I think all people have fear, right? That's why people pray to gods, right? They have fear of nature on some level. Be that as it may, that's certainly the impression of this midrash. Okay, so that's a really stark concept. I mean, you're driving by the bayou now, you're gonna every time you drive by the bayou now, we're gonna start to shiver because it's God's tool waiting just to flood Marland one more time. Okay, all right, here we go. So God builds this siege work. And now let's talk about Noah. Umatzah. Now now we're up to the second verse in Kohelet. And there was in this town, Ish, listen to this. Umatzah ba Ish miskein v'chacham. In this town there was a poor wise man. Miskein, by the way, doesn't mean poor financially. It's just, I'll use a very technical term, a nevach. That makes sense.
Miserable.
He's a loser, right? Miskein. When you call someone a miskein in Hebrew, it is not a compliment. A poor person, poor so and so. They have no luck. Now, let's remember who Noah was. Noah. What does the Torah say about him?
He walked with Hashem.
Right, and that he was a
Right.
tzaddik. He was a righteous person. So then we have the Midrash referencing a verse in Kohelet, suggesting that the verse in Kohelet about a poor wise man is talking about Noah. What was so wrong that the Torah, that the Midrash, that the rabbis would use this verse to refer to Noah? That's what it says, right? Umatzah ba ish miskein v'chacham ze Noah. In this period of time, there was this poor wise man. This is Noah.
Can I ask when this verse of Kohelet was written and what the context of it at the time?
Good question. This Kohelet verse, assuming King Solomon wrote Kohelet, we don't know for sure if he had in his mind that this is talking about Noah. This is the rabbis taking it
Yes, when
and
did
saying
they
it's
write
about
it?
Noah.
When
Right.
did they write that?
When-
When did the rabbis come up with that?
Oh, the
So
ra-
what is the Midrash?
The Midrash is written during the period of the Tanaim and Amorim, 1st, 2nd, 3rd century. That's when the Midrashim are written. So we're back to this question. Why do the rabbis attach this verse to Noah? What was so miscain in that? So we have an answer, we'll go around. Yeah.
Because the rest of the people didn't pay any attention to him and become righteous.
Okay, excellent. So let me share with you one of the comments on this, okay? Who says that exact thing about Noah. Not only it's actually worse than that in terms of how Noah was perceived by the people. It says as follows: Shahayu bazui kemo miskein. Miskein here was an understatement. He was disrespected by the people of his time. And like I mentioned the Midrash earlier, right? There's an earlier Midrash where the people start to chide Noah and to say to him, you know, what are you doing? What are you building this thing for? You know, it's a waste. It's a waste of time. I'm trying to find that Midrash. I put a little sticky near it. I have too many stickies here. Where they basically tell Noah, you're a loser, and you might as, you know, what are you doing building this teva, right? So he's not bazui in God's eyes, right? He's not a miskein. He's not a poor, you know, unfortunate soul in God's eyes, but in the people's eyes, he was. Now that's going to become very important towards the end of the Midrash. Okay. Anyone else want to sort of a different approach to why he's in this game? Yeah. Miriam?
I guess in the context of even before the whole thing starts happening with God and the flood, I would think that living in a society where you're the only person who's following a certain set of rules and everyone else is, you know, playing by a different set of rules, you are going to be a loser because everyone else is going to be taking advantage of you and you are not allowing yourself to do the same tricks.
Okay. Very, very good. Right. So he's playing by a certain set of rules of morality and expectation, and other people may not be. And so he's always going to end up on the bottom. Right? Good guys, this is the good guys finish last.
The question.
Okay. Okay. And he was a chacham. They say he was a chacham. Quickly, I'll tell you that the commentaries and other midrashim say he was a chacham based on the following: that after the flood, he brought a karban, he brought a sacrifice, and he figured out for himself, because there were 2 non-kosher animals brought on board, but there were 7 kosher animals brought on board, right? The 2 by 2 that we get in the Psalms and the stories is an incomplete version of what happened. The non-kosher animals, 1 male, 1 female, the kosher animals, 7, and Noah said to himself, well, why would God do that? It must be he wants us to bring offerings from these kosher animals, even though the laws of kashrut didn't exist yet. And so he was wise and learned and figured that out for himself. And that's why he's referred to here as wise and learned. Okay, so umatzava ish miskein v'chacham ze Noah. Umilatu et ha'ir b'chatmato. This, I think, is the sort of the punchline. He saved the whole town. Right, by his wisdom, saved the town. Why? The Midrash says, Vayal olot b'mizbeach. After the flood, Noah brought sacrifices, and the Torah says God recognized those sacrifices and promised not to destroy the world anymore. So here you have this poor guy. No one's paying attention to him. It's a world where it's corrupt. The people are small. That's the smallness of the world refers to their moral stature. They're corrupt. And you have this poor person that no one pays attention to. But in the end, right, this is like a great, the end of a movie. In the end, who saves the day? The Nebuch. Right, the one that nobody paid attention to. The one that nobody thought had any good ideas. That's the person that saves the day. Now, he doesn't save the day beforehand, right? He saves the day afterwards for us, because God promises not to destroy the world with a flood anymore. Vayal olot b'mizbeach. Okay, that's great, but we still haven't answered the question we started with. Why does this whole section start with Vayiskor Elohim et Noah? And God remembered Noah. And so now the Midrash answers that question. The Adam lo zachar et ha'ish hamiskein hahu. This is amazing. So you have the flood. The whole world is destroyed.
Yeah.
The world continues to exist, at least partially, only because of Noah's foresight to figure out that he's supposed to bring sacrifices. And then the world, now I'm interpreting this Midrash a little bit. The world develops and people are born. And no one remembers that the only reason that they continue to exist is because of Noah.
They never realized it.
Well, they're dead. The first people are dead. But now us, the people in that first generation post-flood, the Adam lo zachar et haish hamiskein hahu, the Midrash says. And no one remembered that poor man. It's so sad. It's so sad. And this happens all the time. People do great things, and no one remembers them. 1 second, Ron. So what does God say? Okay. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God says, Atun, late atun, minaharim le, you do not mention Noah for praise. Ana manhar le, I'm going to mention him for praise. And that's why it says, Vayiskor Elohim Noah. This is incredible. Doesn't just mean that God said, hey, there's a guy in the boat. I got to figure him out. Meaning God, what does this Midrash say that God does to Noah's memory? Like God, Noah's in God's Hall of Fame. Right? God remembers Noah. The world is full of billions of people and billions that came and went. And God, but of all those people, God remembers Noah. Right? Because he was the one who saved the day. And even though he was a miscane, no one paid attention to him. And worse than that, they belittled him. In God's eyes, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter in God's eyes how we treat people. In God's eyes, all that matters is what the person does themselves. And that's a beautiful message of this Midrash. Now, of course, he's a big hero, and hopefully God remembers. And by the way, this is the one of the main sections of the Musaf on Rosh Hashanah is called Zichronot. We want God to know who we are, and we mention Noah because of this word, Vayiskor. We want God to know who we are. Like it's a deep human need, and that's what we're seeing in this Midrash. God says, "I'm not going to forget this guy. I'm going to remember it, even though everyone else thought he was a nobody." That answers the question, Vayiskor Elohim. Right.
We're talking about Noah gave sacrifices.
Yeah.
If he only had so few animals on board, where did he get the sacrifices?
Well, we said he had 7 kosher animals,
That's
of
right.
every animal. So
And these 7 kosher animals and 1 drape animal,
2.
or 2.
Yeah, a male and a female. Not
If he
7 pairs.
Not 7 pairs?
No, 7.
If he gave these animals, if he sacrificed even one of these animals or 2 of these animals, all of a sudden you're wiping out the whole.
Well, no, because if he sacrifices 2, there's still 5.
Still 5, but
Yeah.
then.
And then
how
they
many other
procreate.
animals are?
And they procreate, and here we are. Yeah, I mean, it seems to have worked out. Yeah,
Well,
good question.
They were 5 months in the ark, right? So, or 4 months in the
But
ark.
with a prohibition of procreating, which hopefully we get to the next Midrash. That was a rough ride. Yes.
Do we know why he chose to sacrifice?
According to the Midrash an early Midrash, he said to himself, well, God must have given me 7 animals for something. And we know the notion of sacrifice existed earlier on. In this week's in Bereshit, we read about Cain and Hevel, right, bringing sacrifices. So the notion of sacrifice already exists, and it may be out there. And so Noah says, that's what I should do with these extra animals. This is the current way to interact with God, to show God thanksgiving or things like that. Yeah. Okay, 2 comments. I want to move to the next Midrash, which is
Later on, when Moshe comes into the scene, is that God guarantees his portion. Why doesn't God guarantee the portion
does it say that? Not in the Torah. In fact, in the Torah, it says that Moshe is not allowed in the land of Israel,
No, but
right?
God puts favor towards.
Yeah, and he does here too.
It's just a different way of putting
Yeah,
it.
yeah, I mean, that's a good question. That's a great project. I look forward to hearing about your research on it. Right? Why God uses different language to express favor? That's a great question. Okay, get going. Yes,
So you've said that Noah was in God's hall of fame.
Yeah.
So God considered him pretty important. And the text says, I don't know the exact Hebrew, but Noah was a righteous man in his generation.
Right.
Which the rabbis have talked about. Yeah, he was righteous, but not righteous
Correct.
enough. So why did God elevate him, or why did the rabbis lower his status compared to
So-
God elevating him?
those could be two different rabbinic views of Noah. Right, which is fine, because the Torah is ambiguous, and different rabbis are going to read the text in different ways. So we could have our interpretation of this Midrash being that Noah was in the Hall of Fame. And another interpretation of Noah saying, well, maybe he fell short in some areas. So I can live with that contradiction, because that's what rabbis do. Sometimes they have different reads. And that's what we said earlier. The Midrash gives us the opportunity to look at things in an expansive way and come to different conclusions. You don't need to come to a specific conclusion about who Noah was, because this is not halakha. You don't need to nail it down. You can live with ambiguity, which gives us the opportunity to interpret why. Another way to look at that, just very quickly, is that that verse actually sees Noah in a very human way, meaning Noah had elements of righteousness and elements of sinfulness, like all of us. And you can still be in God's Hall of Fame, because at this moment, right, Noah pulled it off, right, which matched up with other Talmudic statements about people who sin, and then they're able to, in a moment, achieve their place in heaven. Yeah, I hadn't thought about it that way before. I think that also. All right, I want to move to the next Midrash, because it's really a great story, and we'll see how much we get into. Okay, here we go. This next Midrash picks up. The flood is over now. The flood has just ended, and Noah wants to send the raven out. Everyone remember that story? He wants to send the raven. And the raven, if you remember, the Torah says, Vayetze yatso vashov. The raven doesn't go. We're on page 3 now. Excuse me. Page 3 says Midrash Rabbah 33:5. That's okay? Page 3. Okay. So in this story, the raven goes back and forth, but will not go away like Noah wants it to. Okay, that's the story. Okay, here we go. Here's the Midrash, page 3. Vayishlach et ha'orev, and he sent forth the raven. Hadahu diktiv shalach choshech vayachshov. He sent darkness and it was dark. We're not going to focus on that too much. We're starting on the second line of the Hebrew, and where it says on the bottom of page 3, and it went forth to and fro. Vayetze yatso vasho. Rabbi Yudan b'shem Rabbi Yehuda ben Rabbi Simon itchil mishivot shuvot. Rabbi Yehuda said, name Rabbi Yudan ben Simon, that the raven, began arguing with Noah. Okay, now, just if you really want to be a close reading, where it says Vayetze yatso vashov, that third word on the second line of the Hebrew is the same root as the word teshuvah, which means answer. So the rabbis, in a very careful reading of the text, say the raven was answering back to Noah. Okay, so now we're in high allegory territory, right? Ravens don't talk, but is what the rabbis said. Let me ask you a question. How did the rabbis come up with this notion, besides this linguistic connection between Shuvah and the show? How did they get a sense that the raven was unhappy with his mission? Right. The body language, the raven's body language gives license to the rabbis to say, this is what the raven said. So if you're a big rationalist, you can still appreciate the Midrash. The raven did not speak, but Noah is getting from the body language, like anyone who's ever had a teenager knows this, right? Is getting from the body language of the raven what the raven's thinking. Okay, so you have it either way. You know, sometimes we have examples in the Torah where animals talk. Sometimes we find ways to understand that in a more rational way. So there it is. But you tell you Rabbi Yudin, so what happened? Amar lo, mikol behema, chayav ba'of, sheyesh kan, ein atam mishaleach elali. Come on, Noah. Of all the animals in the boat, you're sending me? Why me? Now, we have to stop there for a second. My rabbis in yeshiva would have called the raven's question a klutz kasha. If you ever been called a klutz, it's also not a compliment. A klutz means you're clumsy. It's a clumsy question. Why is it a clumsy question? You gotta send somebody. If he sent the elephant would have said, why me? And he sent the snake would have said, why me? Right? So we have to understand the raven's question. So the Gemara in Masechet Sanhedrin fills in the blanks for us. I'll read it to you very quickly. You don't have this in front of you. Amar lo, Rabcha soneni v'ata saneti. They said the raven provided a convincing response to Noah when it did not wish to leave the ark. The raven said to him, your master God hates me and you hate me. Why does God hate me? He commanded to take from the kosher species 7 and from the non-kosher species 2. And he's showing favor. The raven is the non-kosher species. He's showing favoritism. And you hate me, as you disregard those from the species of 7 kosher birds and instead dispatch one from the species of 2. If the angel of heat or the angel of cold harms me and kills me, will the world not be lacking one species of creature? Why are you sending me? There's only 2 of me. Send someone with 7, right? Because if I die, this is the first conservationist statement, right, in history. If you kill me, we're extinct.
But if the raven should have lucky that he knew he wasn't going to be eaten.
Wasn't be a sacrifice.
Yeah.
Correct, but it's dangerous out there. The word's dangerous. Who knows what's out there? So the raven is, why are you sending me? Okay. So that's what Noah is hearing from the raven, who's like, he sends him out, he comes back. He sends him out, he comes back, and Noah's like, this is interesting. And so what does Noah say to him? This is great. Noah says. He says to him, Amar lo, mat sorech lo olapach, lo la'achila, v'lo l'karva. The world doesn't need you. There's no meat on your bones, so we can't eat you. Or maybe he's saying you're not kosher, so we can't eat you. And I can't bring you as an offering because you're not kosher. Who needs you? Go. You're expendable. You're expendable, he says. Okay?
Rabbi, why did they change? The text said that he sent the Yonah. Why did they talk?
No, he sends the Yonah next. The next round he sends the Yonah. That's why.
Before?
After this, he sends the Yonah because he loses this argument.
Right?
First, yeah.
How did they say it in Hebrew?
By Yishlach Ato Rev, by Yitzei Ato Vasho, but no Rev won't leave. The Rev is like a family guest. They won't leave. Okay, question.
You keep using the expression, why me? And this is an expression that lots of people use nowadays when bad things happen to them. Is this supposed to tell us that we shouldn't say why me when bad things happen?
No, don't read into that. No, the Orev, he has a good point here. And then, how do I know it's a good point? Because God now steps in. That's what we read. God says to him, Rabbi Baraki b'shem Rabbi Abba Bar Kahana Amar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kablo. God says to Noah, he's right. bring him back in. I need him. You're wrong, Noah. We need him. Now, why? Now this Midrash gets why. Why? Atid tzaddik echad la'amod u'liyabesh et olam. In the future, there's going to be a righteous person who is going to cause a famine, a drought in the world. Va'ani matricholo, and I am going to use the raven at that moment. Who's he talking about?
Joseph.
Eliyahu Hanavi.
Oh.
No, not Jeremiah. He's talking about. He's talking about. I'm sorry. He's talking about. What can I think of the person's name? Oh, yeah, Eliyahu. Who? Because the people are misbehaving. He says, unless you repent, I declare a drought. And it's going on for years and years and years. The people are dying and they have no water. And he is in a valley, and a raven brings him food. A raven brings Eliyahu food. Okay, let's just get the story of the Midrash straight, and then we'll have a few questions. Noah wants to send out a raven. The Oreb, he won't go, he comes back and forth. And the rabbis imagine this conversation between the bird and Noah. We can attach the Talmudic statement from Sanhedrin, where the bird says, why are you sending me? It's bad policy. There's only 2 of me, there's 7 doves, send a dove. Because if something happens to the dove, at least you have 6 more. And the species will go on. But if you just send me and something happens to me, we're done. Now God says you're right. Now God doesn't say you're right because of conservation. Or maybe he does. Maybe the point of the Midrash is every creature is needed, even though we may not realize why. Okay? Even the roaches, right? Come on, raise your hand if you killed the roach this week. Okay, good. It's like it's like, hi, my name is Barry, I killed the roach. Right. It's the we don't do confession, but it feels good. Okay, so God says he's right. I'm going to need him, and I'm going to need him. This is going to feed Eliyahu. So this Midrash, there's a lot of questions, right? Why? Question I want to focus on. Well, why did God have to arrange that a raven brings Eliyahu the food? Why not a Yonah? Why not a bald eagle? Why not a rhino? Right? Why? Meaning the story, the Midrash is telling us there's a connection. Right? When you read a Midrash like this, you have to ask that question. What's the connection between Noah, the raven, and Eliyahu, that God says, I need to save this raven because I'm going to use him, I don't know, a couple hundred years down the road to save Eliyahu, where every other animal was available to Eliyahu, to God, to help Eliyahu. Yeah.
They're both about water. I'm not sure I can articulate the connection, but in one, with Noah, God says he's going to destroy the world with a flood. And I just quickly looked at the part about Eliyahu, and he declares a famine by a drought.
Right.
Right. So it's stopping.
Stopping. So the opposite. Interesting.
Yeah. So
this story,
they're somehow connected by the
okay,
water.
that's a great
power of
connection.
water.
That's great. That's great. It doesn't hone in though on why. Meaning, there's another way that this story could have ended. God could have said, "Okay, Oreb, I hear you, but you got to go anyway." And we would have then read the story of Eliyahu about another animal bringing Eliyahu meat. So why the Oreb?
Could have also just protected the raven. It's like it just could have been like, it's fine, look at the raven, I'll watch out for you.
Fair enough. True, but then we wouldn't have this amazing Midrash. Yeah.
Is somehow God honoring the raven? And giving the raven the responsibility to bring food to Eliyahu?
Yeah, why? That's exactly the point. Why? Why the raven? What's so special about the raven that God had to interfere in this conflict between Noah and the raven to save it?
Maybe the raven can fly.
To know that it's not just now. If you want to be righteous, but it goes on and on and on. I'm going to save the world. I'm not going to flood it anymore. And 1,000 years from now, 10 years from now, 100 years from now, things have to go on.
Okay, but why the raven?
Hannah was trying to.
Why the
say-
raven? Yes, Hannah.
No, I thought maybe the raven can fly from a long distance from far away and bring some seeds and fruit and food.
Okay, so maybe it's a practical answer, that the raven has a long distance capability.
Maybe the color is
Okay.
dark, it's black, it's shows
There is-
some kind of.
The Midrash at the beginning deals with the blackness and the darkness, that's true.
Does it have to do with
Okay.
Eliyahu and Mashiach?
What's the raven? We're trying to understand the raven.
The things are not going in a good way.
Okay, all right. One more comment, and I'm gonna.
The only thing we know about the raven is that it's reluctant.
That's the question.
That's all we know.
Right,
Well, Hashem does like to choose things or people that are reluctant to do stuff.
interesting. It's fascinating, right? Moshe was reluctant, Yirmiyahu was reluctant.
Is the raven never like Noah?
Okay, could be that it's reluctant, okay. I'd like to suggest the following. Some of the commentaries say that the raven, generally speaking, is a very selfish bird. Right? So now the raven is sent to Eliyahu, bringing Eliyahu food, trying to teach Eliyahu, stop being so stubborn. Even the raven, who is normally stubborn and selfish, is showing you some rachmanis and bringing you food. It's time to end the drought. Stop being such a stickler. According to these commentaries, that's why it had to be the raven. So Eliyahu would get the message. If it was a charitable animal that played well with others, Noah wouldn't have gotten the message. But because a raven is particularly mean, right? And yet it's the one that was bringing Eliyahu food on a regular basis. It's teaching Eliyahu a lesson. It's also teaching Noah a lesson, right? Because remember, what does Noah say? Who? What? Let me ask you, how is Noah acting? Noah is acting like a raven acts. He's being cruel and selfish. By saying, who cares if you live or die? I don't need you. You're not good for anything. You're not good to eat. You're not good for a carbon. And here's the kicker. This is really amazing. We don't have the text in front of us. But when Noah sends the raven, he just says, go. He doesn't say why. Almost as if the raven's mission is unimportant. I don't care. But when Noah sends the Yonah next, right? The commentaries on the Midrash say as follows. When Noah sent him, it says, "Ubishlichut Noah haya sakana la'orev. Shema yifrach merachok lo yachol hashov." When Noah sent the Orev, it was dangerous. Maybe he's going to go so far and won't have anywhere to rest because the water hasn't receded, and won't be able to make it back. He'll drown. The Noah kivein lazeh. That's what Noah had in mind. And Noah was being really cruel here. She'ein lahush im yitva. He didn't care if he was going to drown. The alkein katav yishlach orev. That's why the text says that Noah just sent the raven. Below katav lama. And never says in the text, if you go back and look at the text, it never says why he sent the raven. Eitzel hayona But later, when he sends the dove, the Yonah, Katuv lirot, to see if the water has receded. Shechashav Noach l'takein al yidei hayom. Noah is trying to fix his mistake that he made in his interaction with the raven. He gives the raven a mission. You're important. The raven, he didn't even give him a mission. Just go. If you come back, great. If you don't come back, okay, that's fine too. Right? But he gives the Yonah a stated mission, which gives the Yonah a sense of importance. He's needed. He's not unimportant, right? And so Noah himself gets the message. He gets the message, and Eliyahu gets the message, because ultimately Eliyahu calls for the end of the draft. Now, when I read this, I know we're just about done. When I read this, it reminded me of another Gemara, which we'll read quickly, because I think it really dovetails well. No pun intended. Page 4. The Gemara here in Tractate Bava Metzia is talking about Rabbi Elazar Bar Shimon and Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, who both suffered in their lifetime. But it says here, even so, the afflictions of Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, were greater than those of Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi. The reason is that whereas the afflictions of Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, came upon out of love and left him out of love, they were solely the result of his own requests, not because he deserved them. Those of Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi came upon him due to an incident and left due to another incident. So Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi suffered. Why? Here's the reason. The Gemara stated that Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi's suffering came upon due to an incident. What was the incident? The Gemara answers that there was a certain calf that was being led to slaughter. The calf went and hung its head on the corner of Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi's garment and was weeping. Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi said, "Go as you were created for this purpose." It was said in heaven, since he was not compassionate toward the calf, that afflictions come upon him. That same body language, right? The raven goes and comes back, goes and comes back. Noah realizes that he doesn't want to go. Noah says, "No, go. Who needs you? Who needs you?" And here, body language, right? This calf somehow figures out that it's dinner time, and he's dinner, and he hides under Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi's coat. And Rabbi Yehuda says, "Who needs you? This is what you're for." And because of that, God brought suffering on him. And then, why did he stop suffering? The Gemara explains, and left him to do another incident. One day, the maidservant of Rabbi Yehuda was sweeping his house. There were weasels lying about, and she said in the process of sweeping them, and she was in the process of sweeping them out. Rabbi Yehuda said to her, "Let them be, as it is written, the Lord is good to all, and his mercies are over all his works." They said in heaven, since he was compassionate, we shall be compassionate on him. He also learned this lesson, just like Noah learned this lesson, and was kinder to the Yonah. Now he sent out the Yonah, it was still dangerous, but he didn't send him out in this brash way, saying, "Who needs you? Who cares if you live? Who cares if you die? You're meaningless." He gave him a mission. And here too, Rabbi Yehuda learned from his suffering, had the self-awareness to realize that he was suffering maybe the first time around from or he realized he did something wrong the first time around when he was so cruel to the poor. Now, I don't think the Gemara is suggesting that he wasn't going to eat the animal, but the interaction. This is what you're here for, right? You have no other purpose in life but to be my dinner, right? And so as soon as I read this Midrash, I remember this. I think there are some important parallels that you could think of on your own. So just to recap, the first Midrash, we have this beautiful idea about being remembered by God, and that even the lowest, or the people who are perceived to be the lowest, sometimes God remembers because they do something great. And also there's other messages here of that Midrash, right? That we said that Noah was a chacham, he was wise, right? The power of wisdom. the power of wisdom to save, to save, in this case, the entire world is also highlighted. Even though God's intention was to destroy the world. And if you read the verses in a certain way, there was no intention for God to promise not to do it anymore. But because of Noah, he forced God's hand, so to speak, and now God promises not to do it anymore. So even a human being has the capacity to sort of change, right? Change, let's say, God's trajectory for the world. And the second Midrash, we have this beautiful idea of compassion, and specifically the Orei was sent to Eliyahu to teach him that even this raven could be compassionate. You could be compassionate. He learned his lesson. Noah learned his lesson from the interaction with the. Okay, thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming. I hope to see you all next week. And tomorrow night, if you're so inclined, Gabi is teaching at 7 o'clock. Same. About what?
William the Conqueror, Ravens.
Uh-huh.
And during the period between World War I, Great Depression.
Hi, how you doing?
Churchill.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody who joined on Zoom.
Rabbi
Nice to see you
Gelman.
all. Have a
Rabbi
wonderful day.
Gelman.
I have a question for you.
Oh, okay, hold on a second. Hold on a second.
Thank you again, Rabbi.
Oh, you won't go? What did you want to be there right now?
Maybe also, even as the flood is coming and stuff, all these people.
Too bad they don't put a motor on.
No problem. I hope you enjoyed it.
How are they doing in
Could
Philadelphia?
be. Maybe that's a better way to read it. Nope.
We're hoping that, your granddaughter.
I'm thinking 3 o'clock, but I'll text you.
They all play basketball.
Yes, Hannah.
Play basketball.
No, I wanted to ask where it says in the Torah, I know it's a big
Hold on, I can't hear you.
Hold on.
I can't hear you. Hold on.
Jordy.
Okay,
I don't know, I mean, I don't know if
Go
they'll
ahead.
get to play against each other.
go ahead, Hannah.
Yeah, she's.
when it says in the Torah, Noach ish tzaddik tamim היה בדורותיו. So the rabbis or the Midrash explains tamim as a misken.
Say that again?
Noach ish tzaddik tamim היה בדורותיו. What it
Yeah.
says in the Torah. So I'm asking, is the word tamim refers to the
She's gonna do
misken?
it on,
They translate the word tamim as a misken?
No. No, Tamim means pure. That's a positive. Yeah, the Midrash uses the pasuk in Kohelet to refer to him as a miskin.
Oh, but Kohelet is misken.
Tamim is unknowledgeable. Until they say is Chacham.
Sometimes it means unknowledgeable. I think it really means pure, like simple, pure. But sometimes you're right. Sometimes in the Haggadah, sometimes Tamim, the Tam is unlearned. Yeah.
Yeah, I know what's Tam. I just wanted to know from where the word misken comes.
It comes from the pasuk in Kohelet.
Okay.
Goodbye. Yes.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Midrash that we hear again and again in
I
sermons.
know, but it's.
And I always knew there were a lot more, and so you
Thank you,
have
Rabbi.
told us some that I never heard
Oh,
before.
great.
And it's
Thank you. I'm so happy to hear that.
I really enjoyed that.
Great, thank you. Okay. Nitza, you have a question?
Yes.
I just